going, everybody? Welcome back to In the Pit with Steve as we get aboard the SS Mosh Pit. I don't know where I was going with that. New band for me today. I put a post up in the community tab a few days ago asking for some recommendations, and somebody recommended the band, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Probably not. Deviloof. Deviloof? Deviloof. I know nothing about them, never even heard of them. Sometimes I get recommendations of bands that I've never listened to, but I've at least heard of. But I've never heard of this band, so I have zero idea what I'm getting myself into, which I love. I love going totally blind into a band. I don't want to know anything about them. Just give me the name of the song and the band you want me to listen to, and I'll check it out without any prior knowledge. That's what's fun for me, because I get to potentially find a band that I really like that I've never heard of before. So no preconceived notions going into this. No idea what part of the world they're from. The thumbnails looked like they might have had, when I had to search for the song, the thumbnails looked like maybe masks. So I don't know if this is a band that's a masked band, like a Slipknot or a Mushroom Head, or maybe it's just for the purposes of the video. No clue. Maybe we will find out as we proceed. But I'm excited to listen to something new. I hope you're excited to listen to something new if you've never heard of them, as just like I have, or if you're a fan of the band, maybe I'm in for something crazy. But without any further ado, let's get in the pit with Deviloof. That seems like a decent point to stop, at least. So first thoughts on this, and I know this is going to come across as like a derogatory thing, and I in no way mean it like that. I think some people have just kind of taken this terminology or this comparison and immediately placed in this category in their mind of, well, if you get compared to this, then that means the person doesn't like the band. That's, for me at least, not the case. This reminds me a lot of the Myspace era, where there were bands out there that were kind of influenced by what was going on at the time with the early advent of deathcore, but also wanting to mix in some grindcore stuff. Bands that were probably influenced a little bit by stuff like, I don't even know if Agoraphobic Nosebleed was around at that time. I want to say that they were. I'm pretty sure. But like early See You Next Tuesday, early to a degree Job for a Cowboy, having the start and stop riffs, the digital effects, the bree vocals, the finger tapping on the fretboard, like that whole kind of thing was very much indicative of the scene and the popular genre of the time. Now, not popular in a mainstream sense, but as somebody that was in bands at that time, actively either in an established band or trying to find my way into a new band if I was, happened to be without one at the time, this was a lot of what people were kind of looking to do at that time. I played in bands like this. This was kind of like a big thing on the underground at the time, this style, this sound. Now, what is interesting, though, is they combine it in a different way with the visual element. Bands that were playing this kind of music at the time were not dressed weird. They were wearing jeans and a t-shirt. They were not wearing costumes. They were not painting their faces, none of that. So they were kind of combining the visual elements of what was popular maybe a little bit before this, that Jinko style, the early like cyber goth style, and mixing that with music that was kind of around at that same time. The style of music is kind of coming back around a little bit. This song, I want to say when I looked, was a couple years old. It started to come around because I've noticed with some of the newer bands out there in the kind of heavy space, if you will, they're drawing influence from nu metal. And it's not going to just stop there. It's not going to be bands that are influenced by like Iowa and maybe Limp Bizkit and some System of a Down and maybe a handful of other bands that were popular at the time. There are going to be a whole new crop of bands that are influenced by what was kind of on the underground at the time. Stuff like this. So it doesn't surprise me that there is a current modern band making music that sounds like this. I think, despite the fact that this song is a couple years old, I don't think we've quite hit the peak yet. This is probably a little bit ahead of its time. I'm noticing a lot more now than I was a couple years ago. So I'm really curious to see if this is kind of going to be a big influence on a lot of bands going forward, because we've seen some really established bands in the space make some changes to their sound. Spirit Box added a whole 90s element with some slight nu metal stylings to it. It seemed like Code Orange was going to go that way with Back for Blood. That was a very nu metal song. They ended up kind of ditching that for the last album, which had a very 90s alternative kind of influence. And 90s alternative is becoming a big thing in not just rock music, metal music, whatever. That influence is bleeding into pop. If you've listened to Olivia Rodrigo's last album last year, that has a very heavy 90s influence to it. So we're kind of starting to see that a lot of the big artists of the time, of our time at least, are shifting away from a lot of stuff that was maybe a little bit derivative of the 80s into doing stuff that's kind of split into two different camps, like mid to late 90s, early 2000s, and like the 70s, because Dua Lipa is still doing a lot of like disco influence, funk influence. Sabrina Carpenter has a little bit of that sound. So it's kind of interesting that we're at this kind of weird point right now where a lot of the same sounds, aesthetics are influencing not only the pop music that is on our radios right now at the top of the charts, but also influencing what's happening in metal right now. I don't know if there's really been a time in my lifetime where that's been the case. Things were always kind of separated a little bit. Maybe in the 1980s, you can make an argument for the way that some of the pop stars at the time were styling their look, as well as the hair metal bands, you know, the big teased hair, spandex, that kind of thing. Maybe you can make an argument there. But you also got to remember at that time, hair metal was pop culture. That was the top 40 sound at the time. Motley Crue was at the top of the charts. Poison was at the top of the charts. You know, a lot of those bands were sharing that mainstream success with like a, you know, I don't know, name any, you know, Duran Duran, you know, Tears for Fears, whoever. So it's kind of an interesting scene, but forgive me for the tangent. This has just been a topic that has been on my mind lately, is just somebody who very closely follows the music scene, as well as, you know, I listen to a lot of obscure stuff. I listen to a lot of heavy stuff, but I also listen to a shitload of mainstream pop music. And it's been very interesting to see some of the convergence of the two, but let's get back into this. All right, now we're getting into some traditional influence, which is definitely not a prevalent thing. So this is cool. Blending of styles. seems like there was more to it than that. Oh no, I guess not. Okay. Anything else? Nope. All right. So overall, I really like the song. I think it was a cool choice to do that kind of like total stop of the song to introduce this brief, more traditional instrumentation portion to it before ending on that breakdown. I will say probably a little bit of a weak ending to the song. It started off really interesting, and it kind of just ends, on just, a simple breakdown. So maybe a little bit disappointing. I think maybe it would have been cool to maybe blend some of this traditional stuff with the breakdown. That would have been kind of neat. My only other complaint, maybe I'm a little biased because I'm a drummer, I think the drums are a little low in the mix. I also think that it's an odd thing that they're low in the mix because they're obviously not real drums. That's not real drums. I would be very, 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 very surprised if those were live tracked drums in the studio. Those cymbal hits were too perfect, too consistent. It's all drum replacement. It's either drum replacement or it was just MIDI drums, which is totally fine. That's not a knock against it. A large majority of music these days is recorded without the drummer actually playing in the studio. It's just so much more convenient for people that are in a situation where maybe the band members don't live near each other or budgetary restraints, whatever it may be. It's just easier to do MIDI drums. A lot of really big popular bands do it. It's not a knock against them, but it's just a little strange that if you're going to go that route, you're going to do the all digital drums, you can crank them up a little bit. You're not worried about, blowing out mics. You're not worried about mic placement and all the inherent difficulties that come with recording drums. As somebody that's had to record drums before, it sucks. It's not fun at all. It's awful a lot of the time to try and get a good sound. So you understand why people go the replacement route or just just complete MIDI route. But overall, I really liked it. I think this is a good introduction to the band. I'd be interested in listening to more of them. With this song being a couple years old, I'm kind of curious because this song is a little bit ahead of what's popular right now. So maybe they were predicting the future a little bit. I'd kind of like to see if they have any current material, maybe in the past year, what that sounds like. So yeah, I'll be back in just a moment to wrap things up. All right, we are back to wrap things up. Went onto their Wikipedia page. It says Deviloof is a Japanese visual kai deathcore band formed in 2015, so just shy of 10 years old. Let's see here. Looks like they've had some lineup changes over the years. Looks like a bunch of them. Signed to a major label in 2022, and they are playing some shows in 2024, so they're still going on right now. Let me see. So yeah, the last album was a few years ago. It looks like they did do a release, a song called Song for the Week that came out this year. This is listed under mini album. I don't really know what the difference between a mini album and an EP is. I don't know why they wouldn't just classify it as an EP unless this is something totally different that I'm not familiar with. But it does look like their last single that they put out, something called Everything Is All Lies, was October of last year. So about, what is it, 7-8 months old, or I guess longer than that. 3/4 of a year old, roughly. So yeah, I'd be interested in checking that out. But yeah, I think overall pretty good. Like I said, a little bit weak ending to the song, but hey, that happens. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you for the recommendation. If you have a recommendation for me, please feel free to leave it down in the comments. If I haven't heard it before, I'll add it to my list. I'm always looking for recommendations, always looking for new bands to check out. So that's going to do it for me. Thank you again, once again, for getting in the pit, and we'll see you again real soon.